Hey guys, my name is Ryan, and welcome to Overwatch Central, and welcome to Master Reinhardt, a video going over some of the major tips and tricks that you can learn from players on these heroes in High Masters and GM. But for this video, we've gone one better. Instead of just getting a high GM player, we've also got a pro player. So today we are joined by UK legend, I suppose. There's not many of us in the East. Well, I say many of us as if I'm fucking one of them. I'm joined by Numlocked, main tank player for NRG. How's it going, dude?
Yeah, it's going good, man. It's going good. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. It's just a busy time of year, as we've all known. So, for those that don't necessarily watch a lot of esports or may not know who you are, just give us a brief introduction of your sort of accomplishments, where you are right now, and if you played for a certain team in the World Cup, for example.
So I'm Seb Numlocked Barton. As you said, I play main tank for NRG. I've been a main tank for the majority of Overwatch's lifespan. Previously playing for Team Dignitas, who were Creation Esports beforehand. My achievements are in Overwatch. I think probably my most notable one is winning the Asus ROG 10th anniversary LAN. Outside of that, I've only really qualified. I've qualified for all the majors, although haven't placed too well at them. I've also won some stuff in TF2 and League of Legends as well, but they're not as important anymore, really.
You're the first pro player that we've had talking about a specific hero. Usually when we say accomplishments and stuff like that, we like to talk about their season ranking and stuff. You got into top 500 at some point, right? Last season, more so than this one?
I've been top 500 every season. Last season, I think my highest rank was number 6. This season, at the moment, I think ranked 30, but I've not really had that much time to play ranked. I'm only at about 4,500 right now. But now that I've actually got some time off over the Christmas break, I'm going to spam a ton of ranked and try, go for that top 1. You
can carry me whilst you do so, actually. That's a good idea. So, it's worth adding that, again, you just mentioned that you played League before you played TF2, and there are a lot of people that I think that come to Overwatch, that have come from, other games, not necessarily FPSs like CSGO or TF2. What kind of helped you to adjust to playing an FPS initially? Because I'm sure there are a lot of people that maybe their aim isn't their best skill.
Aim isn't necessarily the most important skill you need to have in Overwatch when you consider things like the cooldown management and teamwork and things like that are required to do well in Overwatch. So really, it's just kind of how you approach the game analytically. So when you're playing, it's important that you're always kind of reflecting upon what you're doing and what you could potentially be doing instead to help your team, because there's always slight things that you can adjust that'll make a big difference. Like if you use this cooldown at this time, 5 seconds beforehand maybe, or you held your shield up for a few seconds longer, or you recharged it before pushing in, it would have given you more time to be able to play around trying to block the enemy Reinhardt ult and things like that. So it's always really important you kind of analyze each moment in the game and kind of look at what you could be doing differently.
For the most part, we're going to focus on Reinhardt, obviously, and it's worth adding that when you play competitive, you're not always playing Reinhardt. You might be playing sort of Soldier behind or Roadhog, stuff like that. When you're playing with somebody else that's playing a Reinhardt, what are the main things that you think, the main flaws that you see a lot of? Like, what general tips could you give to not make as many mistakes as Reinhardt? Because it's not necessarily carrying as him, it's making sure that you don't get caught out a lot of the time.
Yeah, one of the most important things I always tell Reinhardt players is that communication is key. So whenever you're looking to drop your shield to fire strike or to recharge it, it's always important that you're telling your team that and giving them a fair warning about it. Don't forget that your team are relying on your shield to be able to peek and do damage safely. So if you've got, a Zenyatta behind your shield spamming right clicks, and you suddenly take your shield down to fire strike, and then they get one shot, no one's really going to be at fault except for you for randomly taking your shield down. Like I said before about little things making the difference, if you randomly taking your shield down, that can make a difference between a win or a lost push. Also, charging is probably the biggest thing that you'll see a lot in ranked games where Reinhardts will kind of charge in randomly. A lot of the time, it's a good idea to kind of forget you have a charge key at all.
Just get it off the keyboard, just get rid of the shift button.
Basically. A lot of the time your team might not necessarily even follow you up, and it's going to put you in a disadvantageous situation. And there are so many factors that go into making a charge play that are hard to kind of put all together at once in a competitive game with random players. Like, it's important that your Ana has a nade up, their Ana doesn't have a nade up. If they have a Zarya, it's important they don't have their shield up, or if you do have yours, it's important you have yours up. Because obviously if you charge in, they have Zarya shield and Ana nade, while you only have your Ana nade up. Their Ana is going to debuff you, your Ana will debuff their Reinhardt, but then he'll get shielded, and then the debuff's gone. And then you'll actually lose out on that fight. So there's a lot of little things like that generic Reinhardt players will make those mistakes. Those can be quite game costly. Yeah,
it's almost as if you're sort of using your ult in that case. You've got to bear in mind everything else that's going around so you can make the most out of it.
Yeah, definitely. It requires a lot of awareness to play Reinhardt really well.
Yeah, that kind of brings me on to the point of you've got these two versions of Reinhardt, so to say. You've got the shield up protecting your team, and the drop-in shield and just whacking people as much as you can. With the amount of damage that's been thrown around, I imagine you yourself as a Reinhardt have noticed how quickly it likes to go down. What's the best way of managing your shield HP, would you say? Because it can be really easy to just lose that shield and then you've basically lost a fight if your shield's down and theirs isn't.
Yeah, so generally when you're doing it mid-fight, it's a good idea to kind of take your shield down for even just a second and get a swing in at the enemy Reinhardt and get your shield back up, or even just a beta swing out. You don't necessarily need to complete the swing. Doing this just kind of enables you to have an extra second or two of shield up time. Like, although your shield isn't going to regenerate in that time you have it down, it's also not going to be taking damage, which is important. Because while yours isn't taking damage, his might be. So just little things like that where your shield doesn't have 100% uptime is going to make a huge difference, because this is actually a thing that a lot of Reinhardts also do, especially when they don't play Reinhardt a lot and they just kind of get stuck on him. Is that they just kind of hold right click up the entirety of the time. Like, maybe you're pushing into the enemy team and you're just holding up right click the entire duration. You know, there's a lot more ways to be useful on Reinhardt than just being a shield bot. And you'll also get more time out of your shield if you potentially jump forward, take it down while you're midair, then put your shield back up when you land. It'll reduce the distance between yourself and where you're pushing quicker than if you were just holding right click and walking forward. And it'll also save you a bit of health on your shield as you're moving forward.
And the healers can get a little bit of charge if people are just taking drabs of damage as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's important that your team does take damage sometimes so that you can get that ult charge on your healers. Like, you know, when Ana first came out, the tactic was to stand at choke points and just take damage, just so that Ana can heal to get her ult. And that still applies to some degree. Obviously not to the same extent where you're literally just doing nothing but taking damage. But you do want to make sure your healers are getting their ult charge before fights are happening.
Reinhardt is probably one of the most important ultimates in the game when it comes to team fights. And at the highest sort of end game of Overwatch, it pretty much all comes down to those team fights and those brawls, I suppose, especially with triple tanks at the moment. What kind of tips would you give about using the ultimate, but also baiting the enemy's Earth Shatter as well?
So in regards to using it, I'd say there's two kind of important questions that you need to ask yourself. First is, can you engage with your ult? And the second is, do they have any important ults that you need to interrupt with your own? So for example, if you think back to the Reaper meta, where, you know, the Reaper was getting ulted by Ana and he was just coming in your team and decimating everybody. Back then, it was really important that your Reinhardt didn't use his ult for anything other than the Reaper ult. And that can be somewhat applied to today's meta, where if a soldier ults, you need your ult up as well. But there's a bit more leeway in that, your D.Va or you yourself can actually eat the entirety of the soldier ult. So it's a bit safer for you to sometimes engage with your ult as well. But Reinhardt ult is still a really good counter to ultimate, because obviously if they've got like a Roadhog ult on the enemy team, it's good interrupt for that. If they have an Ana boost available on their team, maybe they don't have a soldier ult, but they've got a Genji on the team, and they're going to Ana ult the Genji. Reinhardt's ult is really good for that as well. So there's a lot of little things you need to take into consideration when you're looking at the enemy team's composition and whether or not you can use your ult aggressively. Although having said that, the Reinhardt ult is still a really good engage tool, especially when you're on attack. You know, if you're pushing forward with your team and you're putting a lot of pressure on the enemy Reinhardt shield and they're not engaging on you, if you can get a shield break in before you actually push in with your team, then, you know, feel free to engage with your ult, because that's one of the best engagements.
Yeah.
And in regards to baiting out ultimates from the enemy Reinhardt, a lot of that just comes down to what I talked about earlier, where you're randomly taking your shield down for like just a second and getting a swing in, just to kind of try and bait out the Reinhardt into thinking he has freedom. It's important you do this kind of sporadically. You don't get into a rhythm, because good Reinhardts will learn to read that rhythm, and then they'll realize the pattern of what you're doing, and it's kind of hard to block an ult. It's hard to block an ult then if if there's too much of a pattern within your play, because obviously they'll get used to it and then they can just do it on the offset when you don't have your shield up. So doing things like randomly meleeing, even if you're not that close to the enemy Reinhardt, get a swing in there, bait him into thinking that you don't have your shield up. Looking away quickly is a good bait as well. That's a bit more dangerous to do because obviously you're not looking at the enemy Reinhardt, so you need to be really quick with your mouse movements. Yeah. But those are kind of the two biggest ways in baiting out ultimates. You need to be careful not to do things like Fire Strike, because the Fire Strike animation is really easy to spot when it's beginning. And it takes a very long time to cast it. So if the enemy Reinhardt is good and he sees you casting your Fire Strike animation, before you finish your animation, he can cast his ultimate. And that's a very dangerous thing to do when the enemy Reinhardt is ult and you're aware of that.
Now, I remember speaking to Cruz at the airport back from Gamescom, and he's a pro Lucio player, and I remember asking him, like, would you play Lucio in competitive? And he was like, God, no. What would you say with people that sort of, because, Reinhardt seems like almost always a must pick, yet you don't necessarily want to play him all the time, obviously because you play him enough professionally that you want to play other stuff as well. But is that sort of really a problem with playing Reinhardt in competitive? Is it worth, for example, doing what I'm stupidly doing and just playing a lot of him? What are the dangers of doing something like that, I guess? Because it's like Lucio, he's one of those heroes that everybody should have a good grasp on how to play, but overplaying him can only get you so far.
Yeah, I mean, to me, one of the most important ways to improve is to kind of have a good understanding of how each hero works, and the best way to do that is by playing a lot of heroes. So I think it's important to just be versatile when you're playing ranked, and try and not get too set on one role, because the better understanding you have of each role, the more you'll understand how to play your own role, because then you'll know exactly what other roles are going to want to do in specific situations against yours, Having said that, like with Reinhardt, the only reason, I play him a lot in ranked anyway. He's still my highest played hero in ranked. But obviously, I still play the game for fun sometimes as well. And it's nice to enjoy other heroes as well, because obviously during scrims for 8 hours I'm playing only Reinhardt. So it's nice to experience the other heroes every once in a while as well. But there are times when you can drop a Reinhardt completely. But it's important to communicate that to your team that you'll later stage be switching to Reinhardt. So my best example is always like Nirvana first point on defense. That's generally the point that a team won't play Reinhardt on. You can play Winston instead because of you need the versatility in a mobile hero.
The verticality of him, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a good point for having Winston. But second and third, you will need a Reinhardt for defense. So you don't want to make low elos. You definitely don't want to get baited into a situation where your team see that you don't have a Reinhardt. They only see a Winston. They think, right, we need a Reinhardt. I'll play Reinhardt here.
Is he always going to be a must pick then, do you feel?
I think so, yeah. Until they release another hero that has 2,000 health shield, I don't see any way that Reinhardt doesn't get picked. The shield's too big, too important in the grand scheme of things, and I just can't see a world where we don't have a Reinhardt.
So you've sort of been in the closed beta and the competitive scene pretty much since it started. You've come across a lot of great players. You play with a lot of great players. So what kind of tips would you feel have helped you get better the most, I suppose? Like, what tips really helped you out, or one tip that stuck with you throughout all of this that you constantly remind yourself that has helped you improve to be a better player? Not necessarily just a better Reinhardt, just a better player overall.
So what I mentioned earlier is kind of something that I take from game to game that I play, not even just within Overwatch, but every game I've played professionally. And that's to always question yourself. So whenever you make a play or you've played a game and you'll look back on it and you'll watch your video, you might record your POV and then go back and look at it. You'll pause after a certain situation and ask, right, this is what I did in that situation. Could I have done something differently? If so, what? And also ask why you did what you did in that situation. Because in the heat of the moment, your thought process might be wrong. And it's important to kind of evaluate that and adjust so that in the next moment like that, you will have the correct thought process. Because a lot of playing games like this is just through experience, and you play enough and you gain enough experience through certain moments, then you're gonna always be, you're gonna make the correct decisions the next time.
Also, another quick thing I want to go over is that you shot called for all of the teams that you've played with. Shot calling is something that a lot of people mention in competitive and try and do as much as possible. What kind of advice would you give with that? Because sometimes it can often feel that A, people don't talk enough, or B, they talk too much and sort of cloud the comms.
I would say be vocal, like be loud, and be confident. If you're not a confident speaker, it's a big tell. It's fairly obvious when you're not confident when you're speaking in a public capacity, and that can kind of make people not listen to you, not consciously, but they won't be taking in what you're saying as well as if they had a lot of faith in what you were saying. So that's my biggest piece of advice for someone short calling. But also in regards to cluttering comms, yeah, that is a big issue. A lot of people kind of write a diary when they're playing Overwatch when they talk, and they'll be saying every little thing that's happening.
They'll be colouring it, basically.
Yeah, exactly. So it's important to kind of realise what the important information is and communicate that. So abilities is the biggest one. That's something that you always need to be communicating. So like Anna heal nades, Zarya shields, Rodor cooks, little things like that. Those are, I say little things, those are huge cooldowns. And if they're not up, that's kind of a go sign for fights a lot of the time. Or it means that certain heroes like a Genji could dive into the backline. So little things like that give a lot of space to your team, and it's important that you communicate that. Whereas things like, say, you did 50 damage to Lucio, that's redundant. He's going to heal that back up in a couple of seconds. Well, not even a couple of seconds, So you don't want to clutter comms with things like that. So just realising what sort of stuff is and isn't going to be cluttering your comms, and only putting that sort of information across is going to be super helpful for shot calling.
Cool. Last but not least, just a sort of personal plug. Where can people find out more about you? You stream a little bit as well when you're not scrimming, so where can people find out this sort of stuff?
Yeah, my Twitter and my Twitch are at Numlocked, so just normal spelling, and then my YouTube and Facebook are Numlocked with a 1 instead of an L.
And that's it for this time. Thank you very much for watching. As per usual, do let us know what hero you would like us to cover next, but also put who you would like us to talk to about said hero. Thanks again for watching. Take care. We'll see you next time.